Okay, hello Pumas. It's Mr. Keller here with the Thomas Carlyle AP passage. And in this video, I'm going to be doing kind of a think aloud with this passage where I read it and translate it into modern English. So I'm not going to be going over the answers in this video. That's a different video. I'm just going to walk through every sentence and kind of go slowly and tell you what my sort of thought process is behind each of these sentences. In terms of reading English in college, and reading English academically, familiarizing yourself with this kind of older style of writing is going to be important. So I would recommend uh, taking notes. If you have like a little notepad, or maybe if you want to annotate some comments that I'm making next to the passage, if you have it, that's going to help you study for the quiz we have next week, where I ask you to translate some sentences from this passage into modern English. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to read each sentence and then say what it means. First sentence. It has been well said that the highest aim in education is analogous to the highest aim in mathematics, namely to obtain not results but powers, not particular solutions, but the means by which endless solutions may be wrought. So, this word analogous here, you've probably heard of an analogy. If you haven't, that's kind of like a metaphor. If something is analogous to something else, it just means it's like something else. So, what the author's saying here is that smart people, it has been well said. That means smart people say that the main goal of education is like the main goal of math, um, mainly to teach people how to figure things out by themselves, right? So if I teach you addition, I'm not just going to have you memorize 2 plus 2 equals 4 or 3 plus 3 equals 6. I'm going to teach you like the rules so that you can figure out things like you can figure out the results for yourself, right? That's what I think this first sentence means. He, so real quick, we're talking about the most effective educator. And real quick, a lot of times things written 150 years ago are going to use he to just refer to the writer, right? Because these were extremely sexist, patriarchal times. So this isn't talking about a specific person. It's just talking about good educators who were assumed to be men. He is the most effective educator who aims less at perfecting specific acquirements than at producing that mental condition which renders acquirements easy. So, good educators, this is basically saying the same thing as the first sentence, right? Good educators teach their students in a way where it's easy for them to apply the rules and get the material. That's what's meant by acquirements here, is just the solutions to the problems or the things that you're trying to figure out, and leads to their useful application. So 2 plus 2 equals 4. If I have 2 apples and you have 2 apples, how many apples do we have? Who does not seek to make his pupils moral by enjoining particular courses of action, but by bringing into activity the feelings and sympathies that must issue in noble action. Um, So I'm not telling you what to do, but bringing something out of you that gets the results that we want, right? So if I'm a good English teacher, I'm not just going to stand in front of you and read the definitions of words. I'll have a fun game, or I'll take us to the library and have you pick a book that you're interested in, something like that. I think is what is being talked about here. Okay. Next sentence. Oh my gosh, this is a long one. On the same ground, it may be said that the most effective writer is not he who announces a particular discovery, who convinces men of a particular conclusion, who demonstrates that this measure is right and that measure wrong, but he who rouses in others the activities that must issue in discovery, who awakes men from their indifference to the right and wrong, who nerves their energies to seek for the truth and live up to it at whatever cost. So this sentence is a juxtaposition, right? So it's talking about what an effective writer does. Um, and it's saying an effective writer doesn't just make a really good point or convince people that a particular thing is true. An effective writer makes the reader feel a certain way, right? Who makes the reader sit up and think, yeah, I'm going to be really, really inspired. Um, uh, uh, Whatever. I'm going to be really inspired and I'm not indifferent to the right and wrong. So indifference means like you don't care about something, right? So you suddenly start caring about things like right and wrong. And I care about finding the truth if I'm talking to a good writer. So a good writer is going to make me feel like uh, a good writer is going to inspire you. It's not just going to tell you what to think, right? Okay. Next sentence. The influence of such a writer is dynamic. So I guess this means the writer might have several different kinds of effect on their audience. He does not teach men how to use sword and musket, but he inspires their souls with courage and sends a strong will into their muscles. So this is, if we've been paying attention, this is kind of similar to a lot of these examples and a lot of these sentences we've read already. Um, a good writer is not going to teach you, hey, put your arm here and grab the sword here and swing it like this. A good writer is going to inspire you with courage so that you will have the will to use a sword, right? If a writer is I don't know, teaching you how to use a sword for some reason. He does not perhaps enrich your stock of data, but he clears away the film from your eyes that you may search for data to some purpose. Okay, so film from your eyes. This is not talking about film like taking pictures or whatever. Film here is talking about a like a gooey substance that would cover something, like if something's been in the fridge for a really long time and you dig to the back of the fridge and you're like, ugh. And then it's like you touch it and you're like, oh, what is on my hand? That's you could call that film, right? So a good writer is not going to enrich your stock of data. It means it's not going to tell you new information or not just going to put new information in your head. It's going to clear your eyes, clear the film from your eyes so that you can look for new information for yourself, right? He does not perhaps convince you, but he strikes you, undeceives you, animates you. So, to deceive, some of you probably know this means to deceive means to lie, to convince someone to believe something that's not true. So a good writer does it. This is really interesting contrast here. He does not convince you, so you're not going to believe what this writer says. We still don't know who we're talking about. This he. We're not going to believe what he says, but he's going to get a reaction out of you that's like, ah, yes, I'm alive and I have interesting thoughts and feelings and ideas and I want to know the truth and I care about justice, right? You are not directly fed by his books, but you are braced as by a walk up to an alpine summit. So, reading this writer's book is going to make you feel like you're climbing Mount Everest, and yet subdued to calm and reverence. Reverence means like you're revering, you're worshiping, right? As by the sublime things to be seen from that summit. So, same thing. Like I just said, a good writer is going to make you feel like you're climbing Mount Everest and you're on top of the world and you have all these amazing thoughts and feelings. Okay, so that's the first page. Let's keep going. Such a writer is Thomas Carlyle. So Thomas Carlyle is this kind of writer. Thomas Carlyle is the kind of writer who he might not convince us with everything he says. He might say some stuff that's wrong, that's messed up, but he is going to make us feel like we're on Mount Everest, and he's going to make us think important thoughts. It is an let me hold on. Okay. It is an idle question to ask whether his books will be read a century hence. Means it doesn't matter if his books will be read 100 years from now. If they were all burnt as the grandest of suttees on his funeral pile, it would be only like cutting down an oak after its acorns have sown a forest. So if you get rid of Thomas Carlyle's books, his influence is so big that it's like all the seeds he's planted are already planted, right? People have already read his books, and he's already blown a ton of people's minds. He's blown important people's minds. So Thomas Carlyle's influence will be huge, even if people stop reading his books. For there is Where is it? For there is hardly a superior or active mind of this generation that has not been modified by Carlyle's writings. There has hardly been an English book written for the last 10 or 12 years that would not have been different if Carlyle had not lived. So again, he has a huge influence on everybody. Um, Everyone is, responding to Carlyle in some way. He's changing the way that other people who write books do things. So his influence is huge. Okay. So this sentence has like an interesting tonal shift here, in my opinion. The character of his influence, so of Carlyle's influence, uh, is best seen in the fact that many of the men who have the least agreement with his opinions are those to whom the reading of Sartor Resartus was an epoch in the history of their minds. Um, this is annoying because, the test claims that you don't need any background knowledge. I think you can kind of you can get from context that Sartor Resartus is a book that Thomas Carlyle wrote. So he's saying that people who have the least agreement with his opinions, people who disagree with Thomas Carlyle, still are really influenced by him. So even the people who, even his haters, can't deny that their minds were blown when they read his book. Okay. The extent of his influence may be best seen in the fact that ideas which were startling novelties, that means something that's shocking and new. A novelty is something that's new, right? When he first wrote them, are now become commonplaces. So ideas that were like, whoa, what is that? When Thomas Carlyle started writing, now everyone's just like treats those same things like they've always been around, right? Gone from novelties to commonplaces. And we think few men will be found to say that this influence on the whole has not been for good. So this on the whole is doing a lot of work here. So it's saying we think that most people who read Thomas Carlyle will mostly say that he's been good. That's why I said there was kind of a tonal shift here, right? As we start to have more and more little mentions here of like people who disagree with Thomas Carlyle, um, and saying, yeah, people disagree with him, and people, he has his fair share of haters and whatever. But on the whole, he's still pretty great. So that's a change from the first paragraph, right? First paragraph was like, he's taking us all to Mount Everest. And now in this paragraph, it's like, yeah, he's mostly pretty great and he's had a lot of big effects, right? There are plenty who question, there are plenty who question the justice of Carlyle's estimates of past men and past times. So plenty who question means who like disagree with some things that Carlyle said about history. Plenty who quarrel, quarrel means fight. So plenty who fight with the exaggerations of the latter-day pamphlets. It's again, I guess that's a book that Thomas Carlyle wrote. I don't know. I haven't read it. And who are as far as possible from looking for an amendment of things from a Carlylean theocracy with the greatest man as a Joshua who is to smite the wicked and the stupid till the going down of the sun. So you got a thumb, what's it called? Not a thumbnail. You got a footnote here about this greatest man thing. Carlyle believed that great men or heroes shaped history through their personal actions and divine inspiration. So this is a kind of famous theory of history, the great man theory of history, the idea that history is defined by really, really amazing, great people, right? So I don't know who would the great men of our current historical moment be. I'll let you think about that on your own. But you know, if you think that Elon Musk, you know, the richest man alive, if you think he's, you know, if you believe in the great man theory of history, you might think that yes, you know, the world is going in a certain direction because of mainly because of Elon Musk's influence, right? So Carlylean perspective would be that that great man theory is correct. And so what the author here is saying is even if you disagree with Thomas Carlyle, you know, he's still goated. He's still great. Okay. Um, so plenty of people disagree with him. But for any large nature, those points of difference are quite incidental. So they don't quite incidental here basically means they don't really matter, right? It's kind of beside the point. It doesn't matter that Carlyle believed in this theory that a lot of people disagree with. That's not the point. It is not as a theorist, but as a great and beautiful human nature that Carlyle influences us. So we're not Carlyle's value is not in coming up with theories that we'll learn. It's in, you know, being an amazing guy. What a genius. What an amazing, inspiring person. My gosh, this sentence is so long. You may meet a man whose wisdom seems unimpeachable. Unimpeachable, you know what to impeach something means? Probably, maybe, I don't know. To impeach something means to challenge or to question it, right? So you might meet a man whose wisdom seems like you would never question it, since you find him entirely in agreement with yourself. But this oracular man of unexceptionable opinions has a green eye, a wiry hand, and altogether a Wesson or demeanor that makes the world look blank to you. All right, I don't know what's going on with green eye, wiry hand, Wesson, or Wesson if it's German. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. So I'm gonna look at the context, right? So you might meet someone who you agree with them on everything. You have all the same opinions. You have the same favorite musician. You have the same favorite teacher. You have the same favorite color, right? But then the same person has a vibe. I'm gonna go with vibe. Okay, it seems like Wesen means vibe here. That makes the world seem boring, right? So some you can agree with someone 100% of the time, and their vibe is still boring, and they're not going to be interesting to be around and whose unexceptionable opinions become a bore. Okay, yeah. While another man, so this would be the Thomas Carlyle type of man, right? who deals in what you cannot but think dangerous paradoxes. So, who has dangerous ideas or whose ideas are crazy and they don't make any sense. Warms your heart by the pressure of his hand and looks out on the world with so clear and loving an eye that nature seems to reflect the light of his glance upon your own feelings. So even though this person has crazy ideas, dangerous ideas, and you're reading his stuff and you're like, that seems kind of messed up and some kind of weird. You're still going to be so inspired by this person's vibe and the way they make the world seem more interesting to you. So it is with Carlyle. So Carlyle's that second type of guy. When he is saying the very opposite of what we think, he says it so finely, with so hearty conviction. He makes the object about which we differ stand out in such grand relief under the clear light of his strong and honest intellect. So even if you disagree with him, the way he talks about the thing that you're disagreeing with him about stands out in such grand relief. So it's like he makes you think, he makes you imagine that disagreed with thing in such a vivid, colorful, interesting way. He appeals so constantly to our sense of the manly and the truthful. The sense of the manly. I mean, I don't know. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this, guys. He's appealing to your sense of, so he's like making you feel like manly when you're reading his stuff. I don't know. That we are obliged to say here, here to the writer before we can give the decorous oh to his opinions. Decorous means polite, like the kind of thing you would say in polite company, right? So if I am if I'm trying not to say bad words in a teacher's class because I know that teacher doesn't like bad words, you're being decorous, and then you leave the classroom and you start screaming at people. That would not be decorous, right? So we are obliged to say here, here to the writer means like, yay, good job, before we can, be polite and talk about how much we really disagree with what the writer is saying. Okay, so that's what this passage means. I hope this was helpful. I could use some feedback for if people thought that this think aloud, read along thing was helpful. I also just want to point out, to succeed on the AP test, you're not supposed to know, you don't have to know any content, right? It's about applying skills, not memorizing facts. But I will say, this passage talks kind of in circles so much about like, yeah, Carlyle said some weird stuff, but the way he said it was so inspiring. So like, what's the weird stuff? Well, if you go to Thomas Carlyle's Wikipedia page, and I'm not reading all this, but if you go to his Wikipedia page and you go to controversies, you got this huge racism and anti-Semitism section. I'm sorry to, smile or laugh at this, but it's just, whenever someone has like a massive section on their Wikipedia page that just says racism, it's like, oh, that's what they're talking about when they're talking about all his bad opinions. It was the racism, right? And then Prussianist and Nazi appropriation. So it seems like certain German uh, political movements were really into Carlyle's ideas for some reason. Anyway, so that's what that's what the author of the passage meant by, Carlyle's dangerous paradoxes, was that he was a crazy racist and said a lot of really messed up stuff. Yeah. So anyway, something to think about. 2014 College Board assigned this passage about how great Thomas Carlyle is. Weird world we live in. All right. Hope that was helpful. Study hard, and I will see you guys soon.